All right, thanks so much for being with us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I'm Joy Lim-Nakron. Just wanted to hop on here and share a few of the top stories that we're following because I have a very special guest joining us today. This is attorney Walter Gabriel, live in studio. Thanks for being with us, Walter.
Sure, it's great to be here.
So what I want to do now is run through some of these top stories that we're following that have a legal questions surrounding them and pick Walter's brain. So this case involving Justin Ross Harris, we have an update there. The Cobb County District Attorney's Office saying they are not going to retry Justin Ross Harris, his murder trial. Harris is the Georgia man who left his toddler son Cooper to die in a hot car in 2014 while he was at work. Well, the DA's office made the announcement yesterday. It comes months after the state Supreme Court decided to overturn Harris's murder conviction. Harris was originally sentenced to life in prison. According to the DA's office, barring any further decisions, he's going to continue to serve his 12-year sentence on other charges related to this case. Walter, what is your reaction? And I know you're a dad, so what do you think about all this?
It's a very touchy case, and it gained national attention for that very reason. As a parent, you're always scared that you're going to leave your child in the car. And what this case what this appeal touched on was the fact that there was a piece of evidence that the state called crucial, that the Georgia Supreme Court said would not be admissible if the state decided to retry this individual. And you know what this trial really touched on, the difference between a guilty verdict and this defendant potentially being not guilty for this charge, which ultimately left his son dead in that car, was whether he had any sort of intent to leave his son in that car. And without that piece of evidence, which the Supreme Court found to be too prejudicial to have been appropriately admitted into evidence, the court said that it was an improper conviction of this defendant. So if the state would retry this case, which is decided not to, it would have to go forward without that crucial piece of evidence, which the state itself called crucial.
Yeah, so really it sounds like you're not surprised by how this has turned out.
I'm not surprised. The state does have the right to retry it, but again, the Supreme Court said it would be without that crucial piece of evidence. And so without that, the state really is or really would have a hard time proving that there was some sort of intent behind him leaving his child in that car.
Were there other charges that you thought that they should pursue differently in this case if it's not, kind of the murder charge that would require intent?
Correct. Murder requires intent to commit the act that was committed. There are other charges that would be possible, basically along the lines of negligent homicide, and that's something that I would think would be available because it doesn't require active intent on the part of the person being accused. But the state has decided, for evidence reasons and maybe for other reasons, to move on and pursue other cases that are more recent in front of it.
Walter, while we have you here, I want to pick your brain on a couple other stories that we're following, including this case, which I think has shocked a lot of people. This involves a Clayton, sorry, I'm just changing the graphic here. This Clayton County correctional officer who is actually accused of plotting an attack against an inmate. So here is the person who is now charged. His name is Sean Hollingshed. He's accused of orchestrating a, quote, vicious attack on an inmate in his custody. Sheriff Levon Allen saying that Hollingshed knowingly put this inmate in a high-risk housing unit, which then led to a brutal beating and stabbing. This now former correctional officer, not a correctional officer anymore, he is in jail, he is behind bars, along with other inmates who received additional charges related to this incident. Walter, what do you think of this story?
Shocking. Shocking is a great word for it. And prisons are very volatile places where attacks and other things happen, and the sheriffs are tasked with controlling these kind of things. And when the sheriff's deputy orchestrates something like this, it's definitely shocking and warrants an arrest. The irony now is that this sheriff is going to require more than appropriate or custody in his safeguarding while he's housed in a correctional facility.
Well, yeah, that is an interesting point there. And what else can we expect going forward with this case?
Well, he's likely to go through the process just as any other person who's not part of law enforcement will. You'll likely see an arraignment, maybe some motions hearings, and eventually a trial date, just like any other defendant. But it will be important to make sure that he's protected, just like any other person who's accused of a crime while his charges are pending.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. How how common do you think this sort of thing is?
You hear stories about incidents like this as an attorney, and with myself being a former prosecutor. Some are harder to prove than others, and it's hard to know how many of these kind of stories, actually take place as they're told. But the fact that there's been an arrest this quickly after the incident was reported isn't proof of anything, but suggests that there might be some video or other corroborating evidence.
Yeah. So think that it does seem to, the suggestion then would be that this was, it's a valid allegation. And
Yeah, a suggestion that there is some proof here.
okay, and he was fired. Clearly, Sheriff Levon Allen had grounds, or asserts that he has grounds to fire this individual. So maybe we'll see how it turns out.
That's for sure. State employees, as this former sheriff's deputy are entitled to more protections as government employees than private employees, which is also another suggestion that there is some pretty strong evidence present in this case.
Okay, I want to turn now to one of the top stories that we continue to follow in Atlanta, not only affecting the people who are evacuated from this building, but affecting traffic on this Memorial Day weekend. This crane collapse or crane malfunction that led to the partial building collapse. What an ordeal. Still no evacuation, end date in sight right now. So, you have more than 1,000 families affected, or 1,000 residents, I should say, of Midtown affected by this, dealing with the aftermath after this crane malfunction incident. Again, this happened at a high-rise condo complex under construction on Spring Street, and a large component of a crane fell off, causing that partial building collapse. Residents of that nearby apartment complex, 10s on West, were forced to evacuate for their own safety as a result. And the contracting company, Balfour Beatty, told Atlanta News First there's no timeline on how long it's going to take to fix all of this. Engineers are discovering it's a real challenge trying to dismantle that crane, get it out of there. They got to secure some large pieces of debris before they can start dismantling that crane. So until further notice, both Spring and West Peachtree streets remain closed between 10th and 12th streets. Certainly very challenging situation for anyone trying to travel in and out of that area, given the Memorial Day weekend. The timing is problematic, but especially for folks who live there. And by the way, some of the members of the apartment management team actually live there, so they're displaced along with everyone else. But from what we understand, these residents are getting paid, get their hotels paid for about up to $100 a night, or 99 or less, I believe, is the amount. But it's not that doesn't take you all that far in Midtown, and then they're eating out, I assume. I mean, you can't. It's not like you can cook in your hotel room in most cases. So there's a financial burden, not just kind of a logistical burden on them. So that's where I want to pick your brain, Walter, is, what's the liability? I mean, are these residents just kind of left holding the bag? Their problem, their inconvenience, their added expense for something that wasn't their fault?
Well, practically that's where they are at the moment. Now, Georgia's negligence laws allow people to go after the party that was negligent, which causes their property loss. You only have so many people who are physically injured, and I believe it was 4 construction workers we know about who had physical injuries from this. But this is a lot of property loss, as you alluded to. And so the people who are affected by this would be wise to save receipts and keep all associated costs with that are tied to their being displaced from this incident. And they should ultimately, the party who's responsible is from what I understand from looking at reports, it's tied to the manufacturing of the crane that malfunctioned that led to all this damage. Now, to get a recovery that's a little bit sooner, if any of the affected people have personal renter's insurance policies, or if they have businesses that are run through these buildings, business interruption policies, that would be a quicker way to get reimbursement for some of these costs. But the ultimate party who's responsible, it seems to be the manufacturer of the crane that led to all this damage.
Yeah. Any other advice for these residents?
Well, when it comes to losses such as these, you do have a duty to mitigate, and so even though $99 may seem tight for a hotel stay around Midtown, it would be wise to just keep all associated costs as low as possible, and just keep as clear of a record as possible of any losses that you can tie to this incident.
Got it. Well, thank you for that. I'm sure a lot of people appreciate the advice. And again, so many questions. We just want to point everybody to this story on our website, where we don't have all the answers by any means, but we sure tried to get as many answers as we could for you on AtlantaNewsFirst.com. If you want to take a look, it's something we're following very closely. And unfortunately, no timeline, no end in sight for those folks who are evacuated. It's still not clear how long they're going to be in that situation, and those roads being closed for the holiday weekend, but it's something we are keeping our eyes on. Thank you so much again to Attorney Walter Gabriel for joining us with your analysis and your expertise. We so appreciate that. And I know that people looking for a lawyer, they can give you a call as well, right?
Sure, absolutely.
You might get flooded after this. All right. Well, thanks again. Thanks again for being with us. And we're going to keep you up to date with the latest. Our next live television broadcast starts at 3 p.m. But of course, we've always got something for you here on our stream and AtlantaNewsFirst.com. Take care.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.